Welcome, it's Jeremy Allen Gould. I'm coming to you today to confirm between God and of man that in fact the rumors that you have all heard are true. I started this podcast because I freaking love music. I was privileged enough to book amazing artists and bands in the past, and I was lucky enough to stay in touch with many of them to this day. This is a place to hear their stories. Thank you so much for riding along on this journey, and I hope you enjoy what you hear. With that said, the rumors are definitely true.
Sunrise coming, I'm guilty again. Rooster crowing, it's not the first time. I see you running, you kiss my neck and pick me up again. It won't be the last time, and it feels like heaven can only, and it feels like dying a slow death. Don't you know that you're killing me with kindness? You're ruining the picture that I have of you, and everything I thought I knew. Jesus, you're killing me.
Thank you for tuning in to this latest episode of the Rumors Are True podcast. My name is Jeremy, and today I welcome my friend Kevin Embleton. You might not know Kevin Embleton, but after this episode, you will. He's a fantastic songwriter I discovered recently through my wife, an incredibly gifted storyteller, songwriter, and I just fell in love with his music, and I just wanted to have him on to tell his story. So I hope you enjoy this latest episode with Kevin Embleton.
You said you really love me, and it feels like heaven can only, and it feels like dying a slow death. Don't you know that you're killing me with kindness? You're ruining the picture.
Kevin Embleton, my friend, thank you so much for coming on my podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. Man, I gotta say, I discovered you, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, probably maybe a little longer. My wife sent me a song, and I put it on, and I liked it, and I digged it, and I didn't really delve deep into it. I probably should have at that time, because I feel like it would have clicked more, but I had a lot going on. So anyway, your song came on later on in one of my playlists, and I remember vividly working, and I stopped working, and I just looked at, I just put music on my TV kind of in the background, and I just stopped and listened, and I was like, whoa, this is freaking cool. And yeah, so I just did a deep dive on you, and I have listened to your music religiously, no pun intended, in the past 3 or 4 months, and I am an absolute fan, and I wanted to do an episode with you because I think people need to hear you. And yeah, man, tell me tell me what's going on in your world, man.
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, I'm just so honored. Thanks for listening. Every stream, not only counts, but it means a lot to me that people would take the time to delve deeper, because the amount of passive listeners on DSPs like Spotify and Apple Music, it's great to get a stream if someone's listening passively, but then when someone's really kind of delving in, that's when it truly means the world. So thank you.
Yeah.
What's going on right now? Well, I live in Franklin, Tennessee, just south of Nashville. Been living here almost 8 months, and I'm just kind of having a go at it in my mid 30s, trying to keep plugging away at music. And so this year, my goal is just to release, one or two tracks every month, and play shows and, I don't know, see what happens. And it's just sort of living on a prayer right now, but we're happy to be here, and I'm happy to still be making music after all these years.
I love that, man. Where did you move from?
I'm from Akron, Ohio. So, Cavs territory and Ron territory. And so, I lived in Akron area, from my mid-teens on until I got married, and then out on the West Coast for a while, then back in Akron, and now in Nashville. So I basically claim Akron as home.
Nice. I've been to Ohio a few times. It's not my cup of tea in terms of the weather, but I get that. I think I was in Columbus for 2 weeks for training, and it snowed every day, and I was like,
it's brutal. Yeah, those 6 months. I mean, the only reason you're in Ohio for real is usually like your family's there, or your job is there, and the rest is like, I mean, we get a few really beautiful months out of the year, but the summers are muggy, and not like in Florida, but they're muggy, and the winters are long. So yeah, I feel you on that.
And I actually went to Cincinnati a couple years ago for a Jacksonville Jaguar game against the Bengals, and I loved Cincinnati, though. I will say that. I don't know much about it other than I had a good time. And I did not expect to have a good time, I should say that. Growing up for you, what records, bands, influences, shows maybe that kind of influenced who you are, kind of brought you into this world that you're in?
Yeah, well, so I'm a pastor's kid for one, and then oh, nice. And then I also grew up overseas, so access to music was kind of an interesting thing for me. I had a handful of CDs. My very first CD, I jointly owned with my brother. It was OC Supertone Strike Back. And then maybe my first CDs were probably like Stephen Curtis Chapman's Declaration album, Newsboys Thrive, I remember, and the Audio A stuff I kind of had bootlegged on cassette tapes. Sorry, guys. And someone gave it to me, but I was just crazy about those. And then eventually we had some more stuff sent. I lived in Turkey. My parents were involved in relief work, and my dad also taught English and worked in the kind of agriculture, like greenhouse industry. And so anyway, so we'd get CDs sent to us from time to time. And so I think the first like CDs that changed my life that I really connected with were probably the Reliant K stuff, and The Beautiful Letdown. And I especially gravitated towards Reliant K. Something about the way Matt Thiessen just emoted, and the harmonies too just drew me in. And the harmony part is an interesting, I guess, factoid. My background is like, or my heritage is Mennonite. So the Mennonites love to sit around and sing 4-part harmony. And so
That's awesome.
I grew up with my dad, singing tenor, from behind me in church. I could always hear him singing. And we would even sing 4-part harmony like at the dinner table after dinner, just hymns, open up hymn books. And so harmony was a big part of my life. And when I heard Reliant K with their like Beach Boys influences and stuff like that, it just totally drew me in. And then, of course, naturally the impact of bands like, or albums like The Beautiful Letdown and Nothing Is Sound especially really, really drew me in. And then another one that sticks out in my mind was I had this live record by Five Iron Frenzy. That the Youth Are Revolting. And I looking back now, I think that record is what really turned me on to like records that were produced live, even if it wasn't a show, like records that were like with the band playing all at once, and that record really moved me as well. The song Dandelions, I would just cry listening to that.
That's so cool.
Reese Roper has the coolest voice ever. So, anyway, those are just a few. When I had access, I'd wear them out.
Did you so it sounds like a lot of Christian bands. Did your parents look down on any sort of secular music, or is that something you kind of discovered later or in that world?
Yeah, that's a great part of the story because yeah, it was pretty understood that it needed to kind of have a Christian label on it. And so you can imagine, when we moved back to the States in 2004, finished up high school, tried to obey the rules. And I even had this guitar teacher who said, either listen to Christian music or no music at all. And
Wow.
so I decided I was tired of, what I had at the time. So I actually didn't listen for a while and I just wrote. And in my senior year of high school, and that was pretty formative for me. But then you can imagine when I got to college and I was in charge of, my own decisions,
Yeah.
how overwhelming it was to sift through, 50, 60, 70 years of popular music. When I first heard the Beatles,
Mm.
I didn't know what to do with it sonically because I knew that I was supposed to like them and respect them. But coming from like records like by Reliant K, where the guitars are huge, the production is so beautiful and like pristine, to Beatles records, sonically, I just didn't have a category for it. And I knew I was supposed to like it, but I didn't understand it. And so it took years and years, and I can talk about it more later, but to kind of find my place maybe in music history, like the eras of music history where I feel like I fit in, I understand the most. That became kind of like a task for me throughout college. So yeah, pretty much no secular music, until I was in college, with the rare exception of a high school band I was in. When I go over to my friend's house, they'd be listening to like Korn and Slipknot, and Slipknot legit scared me.
Yeah.
So,
I get
and I
that.
wasn't super into Korn. Lots of respect. I wasn't into it, but I did in that season get into bands like Under Oath and Amberlin and May, all the kind of like tooth
Yeah.
and nail, staples of the mid 2000s, early 2000s. And one that specifically carried me into college and changed my life was Edison Glass.
Great
Uh,
band.
yes, they changed everything for me in terms of writing about their love for God in unique ways I had never experienced before. Them and
Absolutely.
Math. And so those were the two going into college that if I had to say, I was stuck on, was Edison Glass and Mute Math.
Love Edison Glass. I don't. I had Josh Silverberg on a couple months. I guess last year. Awesome dudes, amazing guys. That's another band. I used to be a concert promoter, and I would book bands. And I remember vividly getting an email to book this band called Edison Glass I'd never heard of, and I would get a ton of emails that was like, "Hey, can we play?" And I don't know why. I guess it just in the cards, but I gave them not so much a chance, but I was like, yeah, sure, you guys can play. And I'll never forget being like, who is this band? Like, floored, like my jaw dropped. And I got to work with them, I don't know, 4 or 5 times probably. I had a show with MXPX that let them open because they were like in the area, and I'm like, yes, I like anytime I got an offer after that, they were on the bill.
Oh,
And man, that band should have been massive. Should have been massive for sure.
I totally agree with you. And I think it's the same thing with Mute Math. And the way that I
Yeah.
think about it now is like I remember Paul Meany has a story where that first record came out, or maybe it was even the Reset EP, and they went on, I think it was Letterman, and they did their cool like live performance that sort of mimicked the typical music video,
Yeah.
where they did it like backwards in reverse. And then Paul Meany says that John Mayer literally called him, and he said, yeah, I listened to your stuff. This is great. If you would like kind of remove all of the weird sounds, it would be massive. And of course, as we know, Paul Meany didn't do that. And he laughs about it now. But I'm so glad that he stuck to his guns, because on one end, like they could have simplified it and made it like, I don't know, I can't think of a band like Imagine Dragons or something where it's just
Yeah.
like down the middle, powerful pop. With some rock influence, but Paul Meany didn't do that. They were doing something of their own. And I always say, if they didn't exist, 21 Pilots wouldn't exist.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so these bands that go before us that don't get the credit they deserve. I know that there are bands that exist because of Edison Glass and have been influenced by their work, that if Edison, I wouldn't be who I am today without them. And so
I love
I'm
that.
grateful for the creative risks that were taken by those two bands for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, so obviously music's coming into your life, and these records are starting it, and you're starting to obviously. Could you play at an early age? Is that kind of did you just kind of know? And I guess on the other side of things, when did you start to kind of write music?
My dad started me on guitar when I was like 5. Like I said, he sings harmony and he plays guitar as well. So he's a pretty natural musician. Carpenter, like anything he kind of picks up with his hands, he can kind of find his way around it. So he started me on guitar, my brother on violin. And it didn't really pick up for me until I was about 8 or 9, when my dad really challenged us to start practicing. And I observed then around 9 years old, my older brother like writing these silly little rap songs. And so we started a band called the Anglers, I think with a Z. And we just make these funny rap songs, mostly him. But I was just like in awe of my brother that he was writing songs. I would have never thought to do that. You're allowed to like write your own songs, but my brother is just a bastion of creativity. He's more on the visual side now, but then, anyways, he would just write songs. And so I probably started writing songs seriously when I was like 11 or 12. And it was clear I was never going to be like a shredder on guitar. I've just never been interested in like, that's not true. Interested isn't the word. I've never been that good at like shredding or soloing or being like the guitarist in the room. But when it came to writing songs and, playing guitar interestingly, that was something I was drawn to. And so, yeah, about 12, 13, started writing songs, and I never really stopped. And I knew probably from my mid-teens and in high school that I wanted to try and do music. I started leading worship in high school at church, and I ended up studying music in college, which is usually like a death sentence to most people's like music careers commercially. A lot of people go to college for teaching and ministry, but I studied music ministry because I really just wanted to learn about God and I wanted to learn music. And so I have carried the things that I've learned in college, every day of my life. And
Awesome.
So I went in pretty deep in college and got what I felt like I needed to get and kept making music. So
It's awesome, man. So, you're obviously going through college. When did you start to take the risk on, starting to try to make a living doing this? Maybe talk me through that mindset.
yeah, so after high school, I broke up with this hardcore band I was in, or we just kind of fizzled out is a better way to say it. And then, so my first girlfriend had bought me a computer and like a little interface for me to start making my own music. I had observed my friends doing it, but I didn't have any equipment. And so she, God bless her, got this extra job and bought me this computer. And we did end up breaking up. But I tried to give the computer back, but her dad said I wasn't allowed to give it back. So anyways, I started making a record my freshman year of college. And I did it in the dorm room, and then I finished it over winter break, and I released my first solo record as Kevin Embleton in 2008. And you can't find it anywhere. Don't go looking. It's not very good, but it was all on GarageBand, and it was just like 13 songs that, I printed the CDs and I sold them all pretty quick, started playing shows. And then after that, I was leading worship on campus too, but really I was floored by this idea that I could make records and play shows. And a friend of mine, his name was Nate Nettie, he came to me and said, "Hey, I'm supposed to start a band with you." And I was like, "Okay." And so we got a couple guys together and we started a band, this sort of indie folk band that I would say, our primary influences were bands like Edison Glass, Copeland, Mute Math, Full Play. And I'm trying to think of some of those early influences, but to name a few, later Color Revolt,
Great band.
Oh, so good. And so anyway, we started this kind of indie outfit in Canton, Ohio. And Yeah, I began making a record, like a concept record, and we took it really seriously. We waited 9 months to play our first show. We just practiced
Wow.
seriously every week. Then we played our first show on campus. It was kind of like, I think it was, might have been free. I don't remember, but it was like the packed room on campus, and we didn't even have a record out. I think we
Wow.
some CDs so we could sell them. Then the next year, throughout that year, we made a record, and we just labored over this thing like nothing I've labored over before. It was this concept record of just all the songs we've been working on, and we put it out. We did this huge free show in the Palace Theater in Canton, Ohio, big venue that we filled pretty good, and that was our album release in 2010. And
Yeah.
we were a band for about 2.5 more years after that, through college. You know what happens in college. We just, whether it was girlfriends or faith crises
Sure.
or all the ways that we changed, by the end of college, or I finished, and then we moved down to Nashville for a little bit as a band. And we were about to sign with this kind of small missions-based label called Come and Live.
Yeah.
Run Chad Johnson, who was A&R at Tooth and Nail and signed all of our favorite bands there in the early 2000s. And anyways, the band was fizzling. We were really struggling just relationally. And so I kind of called it quits at the time. And, we had a really good run. And I think that if I look back on it, I mean, we were just so emotionally invested, very
Totally.
emotionally invested. A lot of like baggage through the years that we ended up sorting out, and those dudes are still some of my best friends. But when it was time to quit, it felt
Right.
it felt like it needed to be done. The only thing I do differently is maybe put a comma instead of a period.
No,
now
I get that. I get that. And that band was called A Minor Bird. Talk me through your full length, Where the River. Go ahead and what was it called?
Yeah, Where the River Breaks Free.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about that? Looking back, I know it sounds like obviously it was a labor of love for you, and something like you said that you painstakingly went over. Like, just how do you feel about that? And also, why didn't you sign with Come and Live?
Well, man, I loved the songs on that record, and they were so innocent and so inspired by just this love for Jesus, but also like we never set out to make Christian music. I don't know how else to say it, but
I get that.
I grew up listening to, I felt less concerned with like labeling themselves as Christians and just singing, authentically. And so to us, it was very much like to acquiesce to being like, we are a Christian band, kind of like defeated the purpose of the art we were trying to make, And so this record that we make, which is full of songs about God's love, but the distance we sometimes feel, him finding us, but in our sort of wretched states, but all, through kind of veiled poetry sometimes. We made it at a friend's house for like, I think we might have paid $1,000 to track it and about 1,000 or less to mix it. And quick sidebar, of course, Joshua Silverberg mixed it.
Nice.
And he kind of ruined me for mixing, all the mixes I would receive in later years. At the time, Joshua was getting started in Nashville. And so, gosh, he did our record for so cheap. And then he just put this extra layer of love into it and this clarity. And he fixed what I assume he fixed so many of our mistakes. And when we got the mixes back, we were just blown away because this painstaking process of creating this album that would flow from start to finish and have this dramatic ending of the song called Occurrence at the Well, which was about John 4, just Jesus meeting us where we're at.
That's so cool.
It culminating in the way that Joshua kind of finessed that record. It just blew our minds. So yeah, anyway, I was going through like a pretty dark night of the soul while we made that record, but I think it added to just the angst that you'll hear in the record. But yeah, why didn't we sign? Well, we were honestly in the midst of like signing papers, and it was a kind of thing where, bands like, Ascend the Hill and what's another band like Ember Days? That's not right.
I think they were on that for a little bit. I think they were. Yeah, totally. I think so.
Showbread came later, I think, but like Ascend the Hill was like a big
Yeah, I know Joel. Yeah.
like highlight for us. And we didn't sign. There's nothing like the only thing that fell through was the band. You know, the band was just on the cusp of breaking up when we were kind of offered to join Come and Live, and so it didn't work out. But me and Chad have stayed friends, and I text him now and then. As soon as I moved to Nashville, though, he moved away from Nashville. So
Oh, wow. Well, that's cool though. I love that. I mean, that was such a great label and model for a label. I know where, I feel like I know where his heart was with that. And obviously, looking back on it, it didn't pan out the way probably maybe he wanted. Maybe it did. Who knows? But yeah, that'd have been cool because I feel like, distribution wise, you'd have got, a little more. But I'm really looking forward to delving into that record after we get off, because I didn't realize that was the case, and I'm really stoked to hear it. So
well, we were just mostly like idiots / naive. So we we didn't know anything, and we were so kind of in over our heads relationally with our beef towards one another.
no, I get it, dude. I get it. I mean, that's how a band's a relationship, and that's just the reality of it. Obviously, the band breaks up. You start to kind of go back into the solo mindset. Bring me through, the kind of your thoughts on that, and then let's dive into the It Did Me Well record, your first proper full length.
Yeah, so the band breaks up, and we were kind of in the middle of like dreaming up our second record. We were going to do a Kickstarter anyway. So I'm left with all these songs, these shattered dreams, these hurt feelings, and in the middle of that, I'm kind of about to get married. I met my wife my senior year of college. She's a couple years younger than me, but we were engaged and about to get married, and I'm kind of picking up the pieces of my music career. So I got a job at a church and worked a couple of other jobs, just because that's what you do when you're first getting married and kind of putting together a little budget. And I maybe took a little hiatus, but I just still had these songs just burning in my chest. And so I slowly started to like make, a couple singles, and I had a couple silly monikers that didn't really stick until I landed on Embleton. And, the way that happened was the music I was influenced by growing up was so like modern produced.
Sure.
So I just kept trying to delve in and to the past and figure out, what is the music from the 60s and 70s that moves me the most? Well, there was sort of a gateway drug there for me, which was Dawes. I don't know if you've heard of that
Great band. Yeah, great band.
Oh man. So a couple friends introduced me to their first like 2 records, and I was all in, especially once I heard that they produced their first record like all live, and the first few. And there was something about that was so romantic to me because, we had spent a whole year as a band working on that record I talked about, Where the River Breaks Free. And that's like multi-tracking at its finest, right? Like drums first.
Sure.
Drums in the basement of actually Dave Douglas's home studio from Reliant K. So that was another cool moment. But it was like drums, guitars, extra stuff, vocals. And it was all very multi-tracked, right? But Dawes was doing things live. They were like killing so many birds with one stone that I was just intrigued by it. And the record sounded amazing. And so then I was like, well, who influenced them, right? And so that's when I started to find people like, Jackson Browne and
Great band.
And
Great artist.
And the Tom Petty, watch that 4-hour documentary and was
oh man, love Tom Petty.
Carole King. Oh yeah, Tom Petty's from Gainesville, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And all these kind of early 70s bands, right? Then the Beatles started making more sense. The final piece, Bob Dylan's become a more recent obsession of mine. But back then it was like Tom Petty and Jackson Browne and Carole King and kind of all those early 70s that were inspiring me. So I got a couple guys together in Canton, Ohio, and we started rehearsing for my first record, It Did Me Well, that we tracked live in a living room with like 8 inputs, like a mono overhead on the drums, just like 3 mics on the drums, top, snare, kick, and overhead. All we had was like 8 channels to work with. And,
Wow.
you know, 2 electrics, bass, and then my guitar and vocal. And that's how we tracked that whole first record. I'm trying to think if we even had click on everything. We didn't have click on everything, but, and yeah, it was in that season where I discovered more and more country, like Graham Parsons, and started listening to more Willie Nelson, and just kind of like I just got totally inundated with like music from the past, and I wanted the record to sort of reflect that. And let me tell you, it didn't really land for a lot of my friends who had listened to A Minor Bird growing up
Really?
through college. It did for some people, but for others, it was just such a departure sonically from where I had been, that they just didn't know what to do with it. And I mean, I don't think my wife knew what to do with it. It like totally was not my wife's favorite record, but for me, it was just something that I needed to do, you know, even from like getting it mastered in LA at Golden Mastering with some of the guys who like mastered my favorite records through the years. And so I went all out on that, you know, printed 1,000 CDs, barely put a dent in selling those. And, you know, after that record came out, I really toured sparingly because we moved to San Francisco then to like do some ministry and kind of keep making music out there. So I sort of cut that album off at the knees in some ways by not really giving it a full kind of like touring chance.
Sure.
But yeah.
Hey, this is Chad Pearson from... Wait. I was never in a band. And you're listening to the Rumors Are True podcast. Dun dun dun.
Hey everyone, I want to tell you about Steadfast Records. If you're a fan of emo, hardcore, indie rock, punk, you need to check out Steadfast Records. It's an online treasure trove of vinyl gems. They've got everything from classics to the latest releases, all meticulously curated. So if you're looking to expand your collection or discover your new favorite band, head on over to steadfastrecords.net and use the code RUMORS to save 10% on your next order. Trust me, your turntable, it'll freaking love you. That's steadfastrecords.net. Pre-order items excluded from discount.
How do you feel? I know you mentioned everyone kind of just didn't get it. Obviously, it's something like you said that you needed to put out. How do you feel about it? I mean, obviously you're proud of it, or are you?
Well, I am for so many reasons, right? Because it's like an anti-auto-tune, anti-overproduction kind of effort where I found like I didn't need to be overproduced.
Sure.
That maybe the songs could speak for themselves. And then lastly, like in an age of kind of bedroom producers, one of which I am, you know, this sort of feeling of playing with a band and recording it and like this sort of excitement that's there.
Sure.
Feelings that elicits in me, like it's just electric, dude. It's like there was nothing like press and record those guys.
Letting it rip.
Yeah, man, you know, and then, you know, going out and drinking a beer on the porch and coming back in and press and record again, you know, like.
Yeah, no, I get that.
We were just living a moment together. And, you know, I shouldn't say it didn't land entirely. I have people email me from like different countries being like, we love that record. And I actually, in the UK, I think it may be even streamed better than in the US.
Wow.
And so, but I will say that when that came out, like 2015, I sort of think I was like late to the like folk renaissance party in some ways, you know, like people had already been doing that. And then there was like a refocus on, I think, production amongst other reasons. I think the songs like could have been way more mature and like there are things we could have done better. But ultimately, yeah, for me, I needed to do that. And so I listened back, you know, on Kevin 10 years ago, and I can look lovingly on my faux pas of a record.
I like it. I mean, I really do like it. I like that you know, I haven't heard a minor bird, but from the songs I like the catalog of what you've done. It's not just the same thing, which is what I enjoy about an artist in general. So, I mean, coming from somebody who just discovered you, in the last 6-7 months, I I think it's fantastic, and I love that you recorded it that way. It does sound like, now that you say that, I'm like, that makes sense, and it sounds great. You know?
Thank
Yeah,
you,
man, absolutely.
guys. So grateful for the time they put in, and it's the kind of little family we had then. So
That's cool, man. So you said you moved out to California and we're working out that way. And after that record comes out, do you start to kind of dabble with singles? Is that correct? And maybe kind of accumulate them to make a second record?
yeah, I mean, the second record all kind of happened by accident, but basically what happened was we moved out to the West Coast. We were part of this church plant that kind of ended up not working out. So we were like pretty quickly smack dab in the middle of San Francisco.
Wow.
And this thing we came out to do was fizzled out. And our rent was like $3,100 a month
Oh my gosh.
for a 1-bedroom apartment in the Mission District. And all of a sudden I had to figure out a way to like make a living like fast. So I started hustling coffee and teaching guitar, and eventually got another worship leading job at a church there called Reality. And basically I started encountering like a bunch of health problems, specifically with my voice. Looking back, it really was all stress related, but I started seeing doctors. It all culminated in a surgery on my vocal cords in 2018. And
Wow.
but it was like, what's wrong? You know, some said it was allergies, some said it was reflux, some said it was stress. I felt so confused that stress could cause such a physiological reaction. But my time out in San Francisco was marked by a few things. One, my health problems. It started pretty quick, where I just couldn't sing like I used to. It hurt. It wasn't fun anymore. And so I was writing a lot, but anytime I'd be under pressure, I would just, I don't know, for lack of better words, crack, or get strained, super fatigued. And the doctors all were kind of saying the same thing. And so we stayed out there for 4 years. I worked for then another smaller church after Reality. And I started a small recording studio in the Tenderloin district of San Francisco, where I mostly worked by myself, but I brought in a few clients and made a few records there. But yeah, I just kind of eked out like an EP and a couple of singles there. It was really all I could do, despite having 30, 40 songs in the wings, like ready to make another record.
Wow.
I just was so stressed out by the way my body was feeling that I couldn't cut it. And but I will say the friends, the people that I met out there changed my life forever. And, when we finally felt released to move, I was able to kind of just admit, like, I'm not a city boy. I always tell people you can stand smack dab in the middle of Golden Gate Park and still hear cars whooshing on either side.
Yeah.
Where it just never stops. And I kind of realized that, just the never ending kind of cooped up nature of living there, it was just really doing a number on me. And so we moved back to Ohio in 2019, ironically months before the pandemic hit, and kind of had a fresh start in my parents' basement as I got a job outside of ministry, just kind of trying to like buy a house and start over.
Sure.
It's like a shell of a man after those 4 years in San Francisco. But at least I was able to start healing in a better way, acknowledging like, dude, that was all stress and anxiety. And I really did not want to admit that. A quick sidebar, though, because I love these full circle things, is that while I was out there, I had kind of posted about my surgery, and I even had to raise some money to like pay my medical bills. And I remember Josh Silverberg, again, reaching out and saying, hey, bro, can I call you and pray for you?
I love that.
And so we set up a call, and Josh Silverberg calls me, and he says, he walks me through this sort of like spiritual renaissance he had in his life, where he realized the Lord's healing power. And he kind of talked me through his testimony, and then he prayed for me. And surprise, surprise, I didn't get healed. But I think something better happened. He kind of re-invited me to imagine that, or I still believed that God did that stuff, that I was sort of living like a functional cessationist in this sort of hopeless, I'm stuck and sick and God's not answering my prayer. And this guy comes in, he's like, no, man, God does answer those prayers and I'm going to pray for you. And so my heart got healed. My body didn't, but
Sure.
Josh Silverberg really kind of changed the course of my life spiritually in that moment because just reminded me that, man, God cares about this stuff and he still does intervene miraculously.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to ask whether he does or doesn't. We're supposed to ask and ask boldly. And so anyways, that was a cool kind of full circle moment with Josh. But fast forward back to Ohio, my parents' basement, we had our first child by then.
Nice.
And it was a pretty low season for me. I was working video editing. So like sitting all day, just misery. And then I got a job at a church where pretty shortly after getting there, some things fell apart with the staff that didn't really have anything to do with me, but like, it was like my final kind of sign that like, dude, I just needed to get out and do music full time and give it a try. So 3 years ago, I went full time into music. And so that second record kind of came together when I just sort of put all those singles I had released from like 2016 through, 2021 or so, 2022 into a collection. And so I don't know that it counts as a full record, but I made it into one.
Well, that's cool though, because it sounds like, being out there, obviously physically, emotionally, spiritually, made you, obviously the songs come from those moments and that time out there that obviously affected you and your family in various ways. So I'm sure looking back on that, like you said, there was some healing that needed to happen. There was some, things that needed to happen to get you to a better place, spiritually, physically, whatever it may be. So looking back on that, I mean, do you listen to that and that record and think, does it bring you back to those moments, or does it something that is freeing, I guess?
I hear the stress in my voice, but when I listen back to those recordings, I hear a lot of things. I hear, I kind of came back to producing my own stuff for those songs. So I hear a lot of the lessons that I learned production wise, discoveries that I made. So those are really fun to kind of remember. It sort of culminated. I'm trying to remember. There's a song on that record called Love for Where You Are that I wrote for my son that ended up, making a bigger impact than I thought it would. But it's essentially, I wrote this song for my son and I just said, even if I can't sing to you, I would just want you to know how much you're loved. Singing is a way I communicate.
Yeah.
It's the way I communicate best. I would say that sometimes in real life, I'm a bit of a mess, but when I can communicate in song, it kind of comes together, the things that I really want to say. And so, yeah, listening back to that record, it's just a journey, man. I hear things in my voice that I don't like, but I just wasn't able to control it, the way I wanted to. And so at the end of the day, I think I'm the harshest, critic of that record.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't regret it. I love that I released it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So, you're obviously moved back to Ohio. That record comes out. Do you tour that at all, or is it just kind of, just playing here and there?
Well, what happened with that record was I was kind of figuring out the Spotify thing at the time. And so I was getting ready to release another record like later that year. So I wanted to kind of like package up what I had done instead of people having to scroll through singles and just like put it out. So no, there was no touring for that record specifically, but I had been playing shows, in that sort of 5-6 year season, just on and off when I felt like my voice could handle it. But what happened then, when I started music full time, I was producing and doing other kind of odd jobs, but really wanting to kind of make my music come to the forefront. But I felt like these songs that I didn't get to record when my health was so bad were just, their time had passed for whatever reason. And so I scratched everything and I did something in 2021, late 2021, called 30 Song Challenge. And I just decided I was going to write and record a song every day, and make a video of it like Casey Neistat.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And every weekday I took weekends off, but basically for 7 weeks, every working day I wrote and recorded a full song, and until I got to 30, and I started a Patreon, and I was posting them, and it really kind of reawakened my sort of I guess image as a solo artist. Not that people had forgotten, but it really kind of put me back on the map with my kind of local music scene in Akron, Ohio. And so I took 12 of those songs and I mixed them, and I had a friend also mix a few, John Merkel, who I work with a lot now. And that record became heavy on me.
I love this record, dude. I love this record. Go ahead and tell me about it, because this is kind of the beginning for me where I delved in. And I didn't mean to cut you off, by the way. I just want to make it clear. It is a brilliant record. Yeah, tell me about it from your viewpoint.
I this day I will say it's the most healing record for me. A few things happened. I was, well, I don't know, early 30s, right? So like I have kids, I have a family. I'm reconciling these things in my life that growing up, I had worked for years, like gone to therapy, but I kind of realized that like I was just still harboring anger and resentment, specifically towards my dad. That like he'd apologized millions of times, it felt like, for some of the things that happened growing up that wounded me. But like despite all this inner healing I had done and therapy, like I just kind of realized I needed to get my head out of my rear end and see things for what they really were, which is that my dad's a man just like me. He's living life for the first time just like me. And if I were to kind of tally up all the ways that he come through for me, that I won the freaking lottery. My parents are together. They love us kids. There's 5 of us kids, and they're just faithful. My dad will drop anything to show up for me. And so it was a season of my life where I had to like realize that like healing is both a supernatural thing and a choice. Like forgiveness maybe is a better way to say it, right? Certain things do have to happen in your heart before you can forgive someone sometimes. And that often has to be healing. But then there's this choice aspect of it where it's like, it's a both and thing, where it's like, I could choose to sort of live my life resentful, or I could just, open up and begin to see my dad, the way that God sees him and the way I ought to see him. And so anyways, a lot of forgiveness happened for me in that season. And that's really what all those songs are birthed out of, is like, the beauty in my life and how God reconciles that pain into beauty. And so there's a lot about, like being, what does it mean to be a good dad, to forgive, to be an older brother, to wrestle with God. That was another part of the record where I felt like I just had to like really wrestle with God of like why all that health stuff happened to me. Why it set me back so many years. And I fought with God a lot, but like the songs that came out of me, I don't know how to, like, if I decided again to do a 30-song challenge today, I'm sure I could will myself to get back into that spot, but something happened with that record where the songs that were flowing out were like coming from this wellspring of healing and joy and new creativity in me that I didn't even know I had in me anymore. And if I were to pick a favorite song on that record, a most important song for me, it'd be Soon As My Days. It's kind of this like Nick Drake-esque, his acoustic piece where I just realized that all along my hope had been misplaced, and that, God is going to make me whole when I meet him again face to face. And so, man, that's a bit about that record.
Yeah, I definitely could relate to this record. There's a lot of, being a father, growing up with a lot of what you just talked about, kind of not so much resentment, but I definitely had some trouble, with my father as well. And I mean, I definitely related to this record. Man, it's a really well written record, and I think you're fantastic at, in my opinion, you're fantastic at crafting a well written song. I really want to say that up front. And in a humble way. I can tell it's genuine. I can tell it's honest, and that's, I think, what I relate to most about your music in general is you're saying things that I would love to say in a beautiful way. And for me, man, I just so stoked that this record came into my life for sure. So know that you have, a fan here for sure. And that's part of the reason I wanted to bring you on this podcast, because I just think you have a lot to say and a lot of people need to hear it. So I just want you to know that. And of course, the new stuff you're putting out, which I want to touch on here in a little bit. But yeah, man, that record's just, it's clutch for real.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, let's talk about, recently you put some singles out, and specifically You're Killing Me. That's actually the first song I heard my wife sent me. And that song in particular has done wonders for me, because it's a brilliant, again, song about, we look at God as this unattainable, being, this fatherly figure, but we as humans, on the earth, we have another viewpoint of a father. And I think, man, like, I've gotten emotional listening to it. Like, it's that intense. So, man, bring me through that and some of these singles that you've put out recently. Just kind of maybe some of your favorite ones that you've put out recently.
Well, yeah, it's still kind of a bit of a grand experiment for me, finding my like sound and voice and continuing to sort of like figure out how to involve other people, but having to self-produce everything just out of necessity. You're Killing Me started when I heard like my worship pastor at church sort of share a bit of his story. And he didn't say you're killing me specifically, but he just said that the Lord, like when he thought he was going to get wrath, got kindness. And I just really related with that because, I can kind of relate with this sort of retributive like nature of like consequences, right?
Yeah.
But like, especially growing up a pastor's kid in a very kind of religious sort of way, like
100% get it.
Yeah, man, it's like you do something wrong, there's retribution.
Yep.
Right? And I just always wondered, like, God, are we okay? Like, are you mad at me? Are we okay? Like, I felt secure, like I wasn't maybe going to get sent to hell or something, but I also had this like sense of just dread, like, are you okay with me?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I started kind of like chipping away at that song, singing it in the living room. These songs come to me sometimes, but like in the most least opportune times when I should probably be watching the kids, but like I'll bring the guitar out to the living room at least so I'm like there and around, and I'll just start singing into the air. And of course, within like 10 minutes of writing it, my little boy is singing, Jesus, you're killing me. My wife looks at me and she's like, Kevin, what are you doing?
Oh God.
And so I kept chipping away, and I decided not to change that line.
I love it.
And yeah, it's just a reflection on just hearing the voice of the Father, the love of the Father when we were going to get wrath, and that'll change you, man. I don't care who you are. That'll change you.
You're right. You're right. Absolutely. Yeah. Talk me through some of these other singles. I know you did one with someone recently as well. Yeah. They're all fantastic, by the way. Recently you've put out quite a few. Let's go over some of those.
Yeah. Okay. So the one I most recently put out a Bob Dylan cover, "Make You Feel My Love," and that was just for the joy, following my blues.
Yes. It's great.
And I'm kind of coming back to that tracking and singing at this, like playing and singing at the same time to track. So I'm trying to capture that energy again. And the song before that, More Than Me, same way. I played it and sang it at the same time because I felt like there was some magic there. And a lot of these songs are ruminating about my season of life. I'll be 35 in a few weeks.
Nice.
And I feel a little bit like a dinosaur sometimes down here around these young artists in Nashville, but I'm still going, and
Yeah.
I'm in a different season of life. I got kids and I've been married almost 12 years now. So I sing about that a lot. It's who my audience is, right? And so more than me, and if I could, are
Yeah. Great
reflecting
song.
just wanting to be the best dad and father I can be. And all this fuss is about giving up, of course, I kind of get tired of artists singing about like how hard it is to make it in music, admittedly, and then I'm adding to that. But I'm also hoping to kind of speak to like my generation who, like, in the most idealistic sense, we're just trying to add to the world the thing that we do best, like
Yeah.
add value to the world and follow our dreams, if you will. But like, I don't even like that phrase. I just think it's like, I want to do the thing I was made to do. Whereas our parents were like, well, you could maybe do that, or you could work a real job.
Yeah. Oh no, I know.
You know what I mean? And so
Yep.
I think about that a lot. That's all this fuss is about, giving up. Every corner is about, just wrestling with God, about his distance. And then I released a song called Perfect Friend with my friend Adam Lama, who has a project called Beach W. He's also in a band called Beach Chapel.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that was a collab we did. And then Keep Me in the Loop is the other single I just released or recently, where a friend of mine in Columbus named Jeremy Steckel, who was original guitarist for a band, Wolves at the Gate.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
He's a producer in Columbus. And so he co-produced that with me. And so,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
man, I'm just kind of, I don't know that there's like a huge rhyme or reason, which is why like the playlist that I made for these songs is called This Could Really Hurt Your Brand. I'm just kind of following my bliss and putting the songs out that feel like that I want to put out. And so sonically they vary, I would say, but I think by the end of the year, it's going to feel pretty like I've captured what I'm trying to capture. You know what I mean? I just
Dude, yeah.
don't know entirely what I'm trying to do yet. And so I think you're hearing me figure it out in the songs.
Awesome. Well, that's cool. Are you planning to do a full length like you did before, a collection of them, or is there a full length in the future?
I think I would love to do a full length. And like I said, right now I'm pretty just enamored with Bob Dylan's story and kind of coming back to like, how he tracked his first records, right? Just a guitar and him. And I wrestle, like, do I go super rock and roll? Do I go folk? I love both,
Yeah, totally.
But producing alone, I have felt really drawn to just this sort of sparse nature. So I have 2 songs coming out in May that I think I'm most excited about,
Nice.
lyrically and melodically. And there will be a full length, but I got to figure out, I think there will be another collection, but I do want to kind of put together a really well thought out full length. But I think right now, before I can do that, I have to figure out just what's my sound of this season,
Sure. I get that, man. That's cool. On the side, recently you've been playing with Jordan St. Cyr, correct? And maybe talk me through that, how that kind of happened, and how's that for you, kind of being not the front man, not the singer? How does that in your head?
Well, yeah, it was super cool. I was meeting up with Jordan just for coffee because his manager said we should hang, and so I just kind of thought we were just doing that, hanging. And then he mentioned needing a guitarist, and I said yes right away without really thinking. Because I mean, in Nashville, you can go on tour and feed your family. It's
Totally.
actually he's signed to Brandon Ebel, BEC.
Yep. Easy.
And yeah, so it's been unique though for me. I feel really intimidated by not being the one singing and just playing rhythm. I'm playing lead, which means if I hit a wrong note, you're gonna hear it. And so, but I've really enjoyed it, man. Jordan's a wonderful guy. He's the kind of guy who, he's got 4 kids. He laid floors up in Canada for 20 years before moving to Nashville. So like, he gets it, that blue collar thing. Like he has an audience with real people. He sings relatable things, and so, and yeah, he's made a way for himself on Christian radio, which, I applaud anyone who's able to get on radio, period, because it is really, it's a bit of a game you got to play, you know.
Yeah.
Challenge.
And have you been able to open up for him at all, or get to play your music for his fans at all?
So they're planning some kind of tour, I think, for the fall. That's going to be like, we got some spot dates in the spring and summer, but in the fall he's trying to do, I think, some kind of more like acoustic stripped down tour where I may be able to open you know, a really, really, really short, like appetizer set, you know, before main support. And if that's the case, I'll be really honored and glad to do that. So, but yeah, the plan is to put some songs out so that when I do that, you know, I'll have songs to point people to, especially in the Christian audience that sometimes doesn't really get. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say doesn't get. It's just that I never really set out to make Christian music. So like,
totally.
sometimes I sort of feel like learning to communicate with certain audiences is a real like skill I'm learning. Whereas when I play in a club, I just let the music do the talk and I don't have to say anything from stage. I can just play my music and people are happy to drink beers and listen. But I feel like in the Christian audience, I need to be a little bit more strategic. And yeah, that's all. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I totally understand what you're saying. And I think that's probably what I enjoy most about you, because I don't think, I don't see you as writing Christian music. I see you as writing honest music, transparent music. You know, I think that's what I see in you, and that's kind of what has gravitated me to you as a fan, as you've just, you know, played these songs and your faith comes out, but your humanity comes out, which I love that about it. So
thank you, man.
You know, I just truly, you know, like I said, you have a way with words, and I think that's such an important, you know, thing about you. And you know, it really just fits who you are, you know, getting to know you over the last couple, you know, months or so. It's just, I don't know, you're genuine, and I think that's what I like about you. So just know that, man. Dude, tell me about, we talked earlier, I mean, I know you have a bunch of CDs you said you have over the years. Any possibility, maybe some vinyl or anything like that in the future?
Yeah, I need to figure out what it's going to cost to put a record on vinyl. But I will say, if I kind of do this next record like I want to, like I'm kind of imagining sort of, you know, The Tallest Man on Earth, you know that band?
Oh yeah, great man.
Amazing. I don't know. I think of him like his first couple records of like him and a guitar. And like if I can kind of put together my next record as this cohesive, like sonic thought, I would love to print that to vinyl. Right now, I don't have vinyls. I just have CDs. I call them coasters because, you know, no one has CD players. But I will say, you know, thought goes into the art on the CDs. And so at the very least,
totally
shows like a season of my life in package form. But yeah, I would love to make some vinyls, and I need to do some research. So
dude, totally.
Out on the road, I'm playing some shows in Ohio coming up here in May.
Oh, cool.
And I would love to get down to Florida and Texas, and I'm gonna kind of start charting out little spot dates for myself.
Yeah, let me know. I'll definitely. I know the right people down here for sure. Tell me what your socials and your website and all that, where people can find your music. Obviously on Spotify and Apple Music and all that, but any website or anything like that?
Yeah, Embelton.us. I've been having this massive trouble with my SEO recently since I switched web host providers, but it's there and it has a lot of information about me and how to get in touch. So Embelton.us. And then on socials, it's just at Kevin Embleton for Instagram. And that's where I'm most active.
Yeah.
TikTok is hit or miss for me. I'm sometimes on it. I'm sometimes not.
That's my wife.
I should be on it more, but I'm stuck in my Instagram ways.
Yeah, dude, I get it. That's where and I post on Facebook here and there, but yeah, it seems like that's where most people who keep up with the podcast go. So, well, Kevin, let me ask you this: I know you can't predict the future, but what does the future look like for you?
When we moved down to Nashville, you know, I sold a house up in Ohio, and because I'm self-employed, I just kind of had to buy a whole year of rent outright. Because I can't really show like pay stubs like most people with a normal job can. And so here we are living in Franklin, Tennessee, in a house, and I'm spending this year, trying to just get my feet under the ground. And so every day, just get my feet under me is what I mean.
Sure.
Get my workflow, figure out like where, I don't know, like the favor is, if you will, like what's working. And so I've got irons in the fire for days. One of the things I do for gig money is like I write custom songs for this company called Songfinch. I write a lot of those, especially around the holidays like Mother's Day and Valentine's Day. So, I got little gigs going, little wheels spinning, but yeah, the future is just kind of prepping for tour in faith and putting out songs, 1 to 2 songs every month. And I feel like I've got irons in the fire. I'm just kind of waiting for something to work. And until it works, I just got to keep grinding, keep hustling. I got precious mouths to feed. And so every once in a while, I get a little too worried. But I'm reminded that all I can do is show up. And if I got to get a job, I got to get a job, but until then, I'm going to keep plugging away at music and see what happens.
I love that. Kevin, this has been really cool. I really appreciate you coming on my podcast and just telling me kind of your history and just, getting to know you. It's really cool. I truly mean what I say when I am a big fan. I think you have, like I said, I think you have a lot to say and a lot of people need to hear it. So, I hope this, the opportunities that are coming up for you obviously pan out, but I just really appreciate you coming on. And I want to say on a side note, thank you to my wife for introducing me to your music. Because again, you've been a blessing to me, and I'm not trying to be Christianese, but you really have been a blessing musically. And I just, anything you put out, I definitely can relate to. And I feel a lot of people will relate to when they hear this episode. And so thank you so much for taking time to not only talk to me, but just, just being cool.
Dude, it means the world. Thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege.
Awesome. Well, it's a privilege for me as well. So hopefully in the future we'll get to hang out. I'll see about getting you a show down here if I can, and we'll get together in person and have a beer. So
lovely, dude. Let's do it.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you, listener, for tuning in to this latest episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the likes, the subscribes, the shares, the messages. I know I say it week in and week out, but thank you so much. I really deeply appreciate it. Thank you to Kevin Embleton. Awesome conversation. Thank you so much for your time. Folks, check him out. He's incredible. Highly gifted songwriter. So I hope you enjoy his music as much as I do. So thank you again, Kevin, for your time. Amazing artists on the horizon, guys, and nostalgia will be a heck of a drug.
Oh, hallelujah. Get up right now. I'm hearing something real powerful for someone. And now listen to this. Hallelujah. Yeah.